All right, Andy, I've been following some of your baseball picks on Discord, and I'm going to be honest, I haven't watched much baseball, but I do have some questions, and I wanted to know about obviously some of your picks for this week coming up. And I wanted to know what are some things you look at when you're building out a baseball card for a day?
Yeah, so this year, what I've really been trying to do is wake up in the morning, put my card together, five, six, seven, eight picks. I post those on the Discord group. But a couple things I look up immediately is first, I want to know what are our pitching matchups. I want to know, are they good pitchers? I look at last year's standings. I look at how they pitch against lefties, against righties. I look at what ballpark are we at? Do we have a tomato can versus Garrett Cole? Obviously, when you look at those, that's going to change the odds on things. So, what I'm really looking at are there ground ball pitchers? Are there pitchers that keep the runs low in games? And then I kind of go from there. I look at ballparks, like I mentioned. Is it in Arizona where the ballpark is huge? Or is it in Chicago where a fly ball is a home run? Is it a right-handed pitcher in Yankee Stadium where we've got a lot of lefties pulling the ball out? So I really try to take into account ballpark factors. And really, one of the main things I look at right now, early in the season, is weather. It's cold in half the United States. The Twins played the other day, dude. It was like 32 degrees when it first pitch was. These dudes are in hoodies and gloves, like they can't even move. So like they're not swinging. The game was 3-1. So on those cold weather games, I'm looking at the under. Now I'm looking at wind. I'm looking at rain. In Chicago, if the wind is blowing out at all, take the over. A fly ball is a home run. So you'll see in a lot of those games when the wind's blowing out 15 miles an hour and it's 83 degrees, that's a recipe for the over. So I look at all those factors, but the main thing I do is I use the old fashioned eyeball test. So I'm watching baseball all day, every day. I see who's been hot, who's been striking everybody out, who can't hit water if they jumped out of a boat. And I just kind of go with a gut feel at the end of the day.
Yeah, when you're betting on so many games and they're basically every single day, I guess you got to watch a lot of it. Another thing I've been hearing about on Twitter is there have been some rule changes. So, how have the rule changes this year affected how you're making picks?
Well, coming into the year, I kind of had my mind made up that this was going to be to promote offense, right? So just to recap real quickly, I'm sure everybody's totally in tune with everything baseball is doing right now. But a couple of things are we've eliminated the shift. So that's supposed to help batters when we've really gone into a metric based game now where the shift has reduced the amount of hits by certain hitters. And what we found was baseball was either a home run or a strikeout game now because you couldn't get base hits. So now it's opened up the field a lot more. We're seeing more base hits, more ground balls. They've also made bigger bases. So it's shortened the length from first to second, from second to third. So we're seeing a lot more stolen bases. Let's say last year, if it was a boom boom play and the runner is out. Well, this year, that same play, the runner's going to be safe because 3 inches on both sides of the base path, he's got a 6-inch advantage now. So we're seeing a lot more running. And now this pitch clock as well. So what's happening is if a pitcher is laboring, if they're having a challenge, they can't just step off and take a break. There's rules to the amount of times they can throw over the first. There's rules on how fast they have to on how fast they have to get ready to pitch and how they have to be in their motion at certain times. And now with that clock ticking down, the runner has a clear advantage of, I know when you're going to throw the ball. You can't just hold it and wait me out anymore. So what we're seeing is Major League Baseball is trying to go from all these home runs to steals and base hits and moving the runners over, a more exciting game. But what we're also finding is home runs aren't just going away. Now, in the past, we had the juice ball where everybody on every team was hitting 50 home runs. But now, one thing that's been changed as well is there's a humidor in every stadium. So now they're really controlling the weight of the ball, the density of the ball. So in humid environments, they're changing the temperature. So right now, we're still really trying to feel out these rule changes. But I will say, as we're feeling out these rule changes, there's been 2 big rule changes in the past couple of years that have really changed the way that I bet on baseball. So you may be familiar with DH rule now is in the National League. So these National League games, you've got a better chance of hitting the over because you've got better hitters instead of pitchers pitching, right? And the other thing is that I some people really don't like, but as a gambler, I tend to like is in extra innings, you've got a ghost runner. In the 10th inning, 11th inning, going forward, you start with a runner on second base. So now you're going into the top of the 10th with a 1-1 game and a runner on second. So what we're finding is the over is never out of the play. You can
Yep.
go into extras, a 0-0 game, a 1-1 game, and now the top of the 10th, they score 2 runs, and in the bottom of the 10th, they score 2 runs. And so we've seen that happen countless times where an under looks like a sure thing. It goes into extras, and 6, 7, 8 runs are scored in extra innings. So those are the big rules that I look at. With the weather change right now and things starting to warm up, I'm really liking the overs. And because of the bases and people running, I'm just tend to be betting overs predominantly.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's a lot of rule changes, and there's a lot to follow if you're trying to bet on this every single day. So I'm glad we're talking about it now because I got to learn. But I think the most important thing for me to know is what are some of the factors and what are some of the trends that you've been following or playing recently?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the year, just I'm a baseball fiend. I'm like I told you, I'm watching almost every at bat of every game. I'm got the MLB app. I've got all the different tools and tricks. I'm doing fantasy every day. I'm doing hit streak. And now with BroThrow, I mean, it's like a full card every day in baseball. That's one of the good things is there's something every day, all day. And on Mondays, Tuesdays, there's games during the day when you're supposed to be working. You can check in on games and stuff. So before the season, there's a few teams that I really thought had a chance to step forward. They had some young, exciting players. And so far, I've been pretty right about those. So a couple things that I find myself doing on a pretty regularly right now is I'm in love with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Um, they're very young. They run a lot. They don't have a lot of power, but they play in this big ballpark. So their unders are pretty good because they're scrappy enough to score 3, 4 runs, but they've got a really good pitching rotation too of young pitchers that they tend to hold the other team to fewer runs. When you have such a big ballpark like that too, it is a huge advantage. You're getting to chase down balls in foul territory. There's all kind of little factors like that, but they put the ball in play. And like we just talked about with those rule changes, if you're putting the ball in play now, it's a lot easier to get hits and it's a lot easier to do hit and run. So they tend to produce more runs or enough to be competitive. So I find myself sprinkling a little bit on the Diamondbacks money line or the +1.5 almost every day. Like I said, I'm really liking the overs, but I find a couple different teams that I tend to really like the overs on. So I mentioned earlier, I look at weather. I really look at ballparks. The Cincinnati Reds, they play in a crackerjack ballpark. It's starting to go from like freezing temperatures in Cincinnati to the 60s and 70s, and the ball just tends to fly out of the ballpark. Now, the Reds are terrible right now. Like they're getting beat 8-0. So sometimes I'm wanting to bet over 9. I just need the Reds to score 2 runs. And so, a lot of home runs fly out of there. Another ballpark, obviously, is Wrigley Field. The Chicago Cubs are second in the league in OPS this year. They're hitting the ball at a very good rate. They've got a lot of power, and they're one of those young teams that Vegas still doesn't think is very good. So you've got some really good odds on them. So I'm really liking their overs. And like I said, if the wind is blowing out at 1 mile an hour, a fly ball turns into a home run. On the flip side of that, there's some teams that just cannot score runs. And one of my favorite teams is the Cleveland Guardians, or as I like to call them, the Cleveland Indians. They just can't hit right now, and they can't score runs. Their pitching is somewhat decent, but a lot of their wins are 1-run games. So I'm really liking betting the under on the Guardians. Like they just had a doubleheader yesterday, both unders cashed, and it's still like 40 degrees in Cleveland. And when teams go to Cleveland, they're miserable. Nobody likes to go to Cleveland. It's just a terrible trip. Like imagine you're playing for the Giants and you're like, okay, I'm leaving San Francisco or I'm leaving California. I'm gonna go to Cleveland for 3 days. You're probably not like amped to go up there and play. They've got one of the worst attendance records in the last 10 years too. So you're playing in front of nobody. terrible, really. They're a pretty decent team, so I like betting them on the money line quite a bit because it's still pretty decent odds. You're not giving up a lot of juice, but I really like betting the under on the Guardians and the Nationals. The Nationals are one of the worst teams. Obviously, the Oakland Athletics, there's some teams that are really bad, but you've got to pay a lot of money to bet against those teams. The Nationals are sneaky, somewhat decent, but you can still bet the under on them. They'll win some games, but it's usually small margins of victory. Two other teams that I really liked before the season, and I've been riding them, and they've been doing really well, are the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Baltimore Orioles, two teams that have been historically pretty bad. Vegas has their over-unders pretty low to start the year. So you find good value at the plus 100 or the plus 120s when they're playing somewhat decent teams. So I tend to always find myself liking the Orioles, and I'll even pay a little bit more for the plus 1.5 on these teams. Some teams that I really hate and I love betting against are the Giants. I mean, they're absolutely terrible. They've got Darren Ruff batting the 3-hole. Could you name two? I know you don't watch baseball. I bet not many people that have tuned into this will be able to tell me two players that even play for the Giants.
They're just that bad right now?
I mean, last year they won 100 something games, or the year before they won. I mean, they're always like, you think they're going to be bad, and then they win a bunch of games and they win their division, or they're right there with the Dodgers and the Padres. But this year, I mean, they're not doing that. So I don't know their record. I think it's like 6-13 or something like that. It's not good. Somebody's comment, let me know what their actual record is. But their starting pitching is very poor. I like to bet against the Red Sox. They're just bad. If you watch them, they're just a bad team to watch right now. And then the Colorado Rockies. Obviously, for years, you always bet the over and things like that in Colorado. But anytime the Rockies are on the road, their pitching is so bad. I mean, every pitcher they've got like an 8, 9, 12 ERA. So they're a good team to bet the over on as well. But I really will bet the minus 1.5 against them. The last thing that I wrote down here that I want to tell people is, like, when it comes to baseball, you've got teams that'll win 100 games. They'll go 162. Right. So, like, don't be afraid to bet the minus 150, the minus 200. The Oakland Athletics are going to win 50 games. So 115 times or 112 times, they're going to lose. So while you may lay 25 to win 15, it's almost free $15 every day if you bet against those teams. So I don't hesitate to bet the Rays minus 150 or, some of the Braves minus 200 against the Marlins. Like, I'm not afraid to do that because 80% of the time they're going to cover, they're going to win those games. And so I'm just going to ride with those good teams in good ballparks with good pitching matchups. And you know what? If you lose, you're going to lose some of those games, but you're betting 8 to 10 games a day, every day in baseball, and you're winning more than you're losing on BroThrow. That's free money every day.
Yeah, I remember there was a day you went 9-1, and then you've had some other positive days. So I've felt it because I've been winning with you. But tomorrow we've got 11 games on the slate. So I know you said you got some picks. What are your picks for Monday?
Yeah, so for tomorrow, it's all evening games. So this will give you plenty of time to watch this and get prepped for I guess it would be today, for tonight's game. So the first game that I like, and it goes along with these themes that we just talked about, is I like the Orioles money line plus 110. They're at home and they're against the Red Sox and Chris Sale. Chris Sale could give up 15 runs in the first inning. So definitely not afraid of the Red Sox, like I said. So Orioles plus 110. Second one that I got is the Blue Jays over 9. They're really starting to hit the ball really well. I know they're winning pretty well right now, but they're going up against Lance Lynn and the White Sox. And I was just looking at Lance Lynn's last few starts. He's given up 10 hits, 7 hits, 9 hits in his last 3 games. And like I said, these big guys in the pitch clock, it's really causing them to labor. And he's been he'll strike out. Like, he struck out 10 the other day, but the Blue Jays are going to score runs. I just need the White Sox to score a couple with them. Third game is Twins minus 120. Dude, Sonny Gray's got a below 1 ERA. Let me see what it exactly is right here. It is
0.82.
0.82 ERA. And they're playing the Yankees, and the Yankees have been struggling. The Yankees are like 19th in the league right now in runs scored. but yet Vegas loves the name of the Yankees. So a dominant pitcher at home versus a team that doesn't score, and you're giving it to me at only minus 120. If the names were reversed, it would be minus 200. So I'm taking that value of the Twins minus 120, and they've been playing pretty well. Next, I've got the Giants and Cardinals over 8.5. It's a good weather game, and they're not great pitchers. Like I said, you can't name two Giants, and I've just been saying how terrible they are, but surprisingly enough, they're third in the league in home runs. I'm predicting like an 8-5 final. The Cardinals are good enough to score at the bottom of their lineup, so I think they're just going to be putting the ball in play. I think the Giants are good enough to score a couple runs, hit a home run here or there, so I think that over 8.5 is an easy play. Again, every day until further notice, bet on the Diamondbacks. They play the Royals. The Royals are terrible, and it's only minus 120. I'll play that all day. That might be my hammer play of the day. Second to last pick, Guardians under 8. Again, they can't hit. It's cold. The wind is blowing in. I look at weather, like a couple different websites that do about weather and park factors, and this one's got the snowflake all around the park and the wind's blowing in for tomorrow. So I just feel like I'm going to keep riding that under on the Guardians. I like to throw at least one pick in there a day that's some good plus money. And so on Monday, I'm going to pick, which probably nobody else will want to pick, but I'm going to go with the Marlins plus 220. They're playing one of the best teams in baseball, the Braves. But when you get plus money on a team with a good pitcher going, so like the Marlins have some very good young talent throwing the ball, and they've got some young hitters that can get lucky. The Braves are great, and Spencer Strider's amazing, but there's only 11 games, and you've got to find something that can get you a little bit over the top. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on the Marlins plus 220.
I like it. So then we've got games on Tuesday. Have you looked at those yet?
Yeah, I've looked at a couple things. So I try to keep an eye out a day or two in advance because things change. There's injuries, there's rainouts. I try to get the lines will start changing. Now, the lines don't really come out until the day before when the games are underway, but just looking at a few pitching matchups and some of my, I guess you can call system plays based on the things we just discussed today, is I really like the Pirates. This young pitcher, Oviedo, has been pitching really well, and he's going up against Noah Syndergaard and the Dodgers. So the Dodgers have that name where Vegas is going to love to weight that. It's going to be tough to bet the Pirates. Everybody's going to want the Dodgers. Syndergaard is hit or miss, but he's trending down for the past couple of years. I like a hot Pirates team, a hot pitcher. They're young. It's still early. They're playing with a lot of emotion. So I'm going to ride with the Pirates tomorrow. I also am going to stay on that White Sox and Blue Jays over line. The Blue Jays, again, have just been hitting the ball really well, but also they've got Jose Barrios pitching on Tuesday. He may be one of the worst pitchers in baseball, but he'll go out there and once or twice a year look like he could throw a perfect game. He's like Chris Sale. He could give up 15 to 35 runs in the first inning. So I'm just going to keep riding the over. Anytime Jose Barrios is pitching, I'm going to ride the over. I'm also going to stay on the Giants Cardinals over for the same reason as for Monday. They've got warm weather. Sean Manaea's pitching. He can look good at times, but when he's playing good teams, he just looks awful. So I'm just going to stay on the Giants over, and then maybe they can hit a few more home runs. Again, I'm going to go with the Orioles and Red Sox over, kind of like on Monday. Corey Kluber's not good. So when I say I'm looking at pitching matchups, it's not always like who is this dominant Garrett Cole type pitcher, but who's a pitcher that can give up 35 runs in the first two innings. And Corey Kluber is one of those guys too. So Orioles, Red Sox over. I'm going to keep an eye on all those, but I'm pretty sure I can go ahead and lock those in.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'll be following you on those. And if you want to get Andy's picks, he posts them up in the BroThrow Discord every single day. I think, 5 to 10 picks literally every day. And if you want to join the BroThrow Discord, you just click the link in the description below. It's free to join. And we have over 200 players in there who all have conversations about the different sports they're betting on in BroThrow. Andy, thank you for coming on and talking baseball with us. And I'll see you in the next one.
Awesome.